Hello, and welcome back to the Full-Time Voice. I'm Hannah Morales, and joining me today, as always, is our brilliant football analyst, Gaffers Gezelzes. Gaffer, it's been a whirlwind summer, hasn't it?
It certainly has, Hannah. And if there's one story that's dominating headlines right now, it's the situation surrounding Newcastle star striker Alexander Isak.
Isak's unsettling absence. It truly is. The news broke just as Newcastle's squad flew out for their preseason tour of Asia, and Isak was conspicuously absent. The official line from the club is a minor thigh injury and that a long-haul flight wouldn't aid his recovery. But let's be honest, Gaffer, that feels like only part of the story, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Hannah. It's a classic situation where the official narrative masks a deeper truth. We know Isak was sent home from the friendly against Celtic just 5 days prior to the Asia tour, with manager Eddie Howe stating it was due to the speculation around him. That's a direct quote, and it speaks volumes. His head has been turned, and it's now understood he's interested in a move away from St. James Park. And this comes just 4 months after he played a starring role in Newcastle's League Cup triumph over Liverpool, helping them win their first trophy since 1969. You'd think a player integral to such a historic moment would be settled and looking forward to building on that success. You would, but the reality of modern football, Hannah, is that loyalties can be fluid, especially when big clubs come knocking. The intense scrutiny over his future seems to have genuinely impacted him. It's a tough spot for Eddie Howe, who has publicly stated his confidence that Isak will be at St. James Park for the start of the season. Howe said, "It was my decision. I decided to send him home due to the speculation around him. I have never had any issue with him other than seeing him express his talent and express himself. Certainly, I am confident that he is going to be here at the start of the season." Strong words from the manager, but the player's actions suggest otherwise.
Liverpool's approach and Newcastle's stance. Now, let's talk about the interested parties. Liverpool made an approach for Isak last week. This is significant, especially considering their own recent transfer activity. What do we know about that approach, Gaffer?
Well, Hannah, Liverpool were reportedly willing to pay around £120 million for Isak. That's a huge sum, but it's understood that Newcastle are absolutely adamant that Isak is not for sale. They're sticking rigidly to a staggering £150 million valuation. For context, if a deal goes through at that price, it would be the biggest in British football history, surpassing Philippe Coutinho's £142 million move from Liverpool to Barcelona. It would also significantly exceed the £106 million Chelsea paid Benfica for Enzo Fernandez.
£150 million is an astronomical figure. Newcastle themselves paid Real Sociedad £63 million for Isak in 2022. That's a potential profit of £87 million in just a few years. It's hard to ignore such numbers.
It is, but credit to Newcastle, they're playing hardball. Chairman Yasser Al-Rahmanian and co-owner Jamie Rubin have backed Eddie Howe's decision to resist any attempts to prize Isak away. Sources close to the club have indicated that Newcastle intend to ride out the storm and refuse any transfer requests. They view Isak as irreplaceable. Howe himself said, "We have a few of those players who are irreplaceable. Your top players are so hard to find, so hard to recruit, and so hard to develop. So when you have them, you need to treasure them." That clearly indicates their determination to keep him.
The Hugo Ekitike factor. This whole situation is further complicated by Liverpool's recent signing of Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt. Initially, Newcastle were interested in Ekitike to support Isak, not replace him. But it seems Liverpool effectively hijacked that deal.
Precisely, Hannah. Newcastle had a club record offer of £70 million for Ekitike, rejected by Frankfurt. Then once Newcastle made it clear they wouldn't do business on Isak, Liverpool switched their attention to Ekitike and secured him for £79 million. It's an interesting turn of events showing how quickly priorities can shift in the transfer market. Liverpool needed a striker, and after being rebuffed on Isak, they moved swiftly for Ekitike. He's a highly rated young forward, scoring 22 goals in 48 games across all competitions last season for Frankfurt. Liverpool see him as a multifunctional center forward, who primarily plays as a number 9, but can also drop into a second striker or operate wide. So Liverpool have their new striker in Ekitike. Does this mean their interest in Isak has cooled significantly, or could they still be a factor down the line? It certainly complicates things. Liverpool have spent close to £300 million this summer, with Ekitike's £79 million deal and Florian Wirtz's £100 million initial fee being significant outlays. While they remain long-term admirers of Isak, and some reports suggest they still retain interest, especially if a player like Darwin Núñez were to leave, it's fair to say Ekitike's arrival significantly reduces the immediate need for another high-cost striker. Liverpool are currently comfortable with their options at center forward. The financial fair play implications alone, after such a substantial summer spend, would make another record-breaking bid for Isak incredibly challenging right now.
Potential destinations for Isak. If Newcastle were to budge on their £150 million valuation and Isak genuinely wants out, where else could he realistically go? He was the most prolific number 9 in the Premier League last season, so there will undoubtedly be suitors.
That's the multi-million-dollar question, Hannah. With Newcastle valuing Isak at £150 million, the list of clubs who can actually afford such a signing is very short. We're talking about a very elite tier of clubs, and even within that, many have other priorities or already have established strikers.
Let's run through some of the usual suspects.
Arsenal. Arsenal are reportedly down the line with a move for Victor Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon as their striking signing for the summer. They had also considered Benjamin Sesko of RB Leipzig. While Mikel Arteta is said to be an admirer of Isak, it's seen as virtually impossible that Arsenal's Kronen ownership would extend the budget for a player in Isak's price range, especially with Gyökeres coming in at less than half that cost. So Arsenal seems highly unlikely right now.
Manchester City. They already have Erling Haaland.
Exactly. Manchester City have Erling Haaland leading their attack, and he's arguably the best number 9 in the world. It's simply not a position they need to strengthen at that kind of price point. They operate smartly and strategically in the market, and spending £150 million on another striker makes no sense for them.
And what about Tottenham Hotspur? They qualified for the Champions League by winning the Europa League.
Tottenham are looking at other areas for reinforcement. While they will be bolstering their squad for Champions League football, a £150 million striker is likely beyond their current transfer strategy, especially with other positions of greater need to address.
And Chelsea, they've been big spenders in recent windows.
Chelsea have signed Liam Delap for that position and also added João Pedro, who can play across the front line. While they do have budget left, reportedly around £100 million, committing to £150 million for Isak might be a step too far for them, especially given their recent acquisitions and the need to balance their squad. There is some speculation they may consider a move, but it would require a significant shift in their current planning.
The uncharted territory of a £150 million striker. It sounds like Newcastle's valuation, while perhaps a deterrent, also reflects the incredibly limited market for a player at that price. There just aren't many clubs who can or would sanction such a deal.
You've hit the nail on the head, Hannah. When you set a price tag of £150 million, you're immediately narrowing the potential buyers down to a tiny handful of clubs, most of whom either don't have the current need or the financial headroom under PSR rules to make such a move without offloading significant assets themselves. The Independent has also noted that while Isak is an outstanding talent, there's some doubt about whether £150 million is worth it for a player who has recently struggled to consistently play in full European schedules without injury. That's a valid concern for any club looking to invest such a huge sum.
And Isak has 3 years left on his contract with Newcastle. That puts them in a very strong bargaining position.
Exactly. A player being unsettled is one thing, but if the club doesn't need to sell and has a high valuation, they can simply refuse, and that seems to be Newcastle's current stance. They're determined to keep him and build their team around him as they head back into the Champions League. Eddie Howe has an incredibly challenging man management task ahead of him to get Isak's head back in the game, but he's a formidable manager.
Looking ahead. So, as things stand, it appears Alexander Isak will remain a Newcastle United player, at least for the immediate future. The club's firm stance and the lack of viable alternatives at their astronomical valuation seem to be the dominant factors.
That's my assessment, Hannah. The speculation will undoubtedly continue, especially with the transfer window still open, but Newcastle holds all the cards. They've made their position abundantly clear. Whether Isak's perceived desire to explore a move will impact his performances remains to be seen, but for now, he's a Newcastle player. It's a fascinating subplot to what is already a very active transfer window. The saga of Alexander Isak and Newcastle United is far from over in terms of the narrative, even if the transfer itself isn't happening immediately. No, it's not, and it underscores the immense pressures and complexities within modern football transfers. It's not just about player talent, it's about finances, club ambition, player desires, and the intricate dance between all these elements.
Indeed. Well, Gaffer, thank you for breaking down this developing story for us. It's been incredibly insightful, as always.
My pleasure, Hannah.